Well, welcome to our webinar today. I'm going to share a couple slides here. Today, we are fortunate enough to have Sari Kimball with us. And Sari is the CEO of Food Biz Success, business coach and course creator. Her information can be found here. Just some reminders if we, while she's presenting, if we could mute our microphones. This just helps eliminate background noise so we can really hear what she's sharing. We want questions, raise your hand or type them in the chat. I'll monitor that. And we'll ask for questions throughout the time. And if you come up with any questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to Sari or contact me, Barb Howe. This is my email address, barb.howe@state.co.us. Thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter. And just a little bit about Sari. She has held just about every position in the CPG food industry, from grocery buyer to selling local produce wholesale into stores. She's run a commissary kitchen. She's been a marketing director and a buyer for Whole Foods Market. There was a layoff in 2015, and she took that push to kind of really start helping entrepreneurs and people dreaming about starting their own packaged food or handmade product businesses. Through one-on-one business and mindset coaching or her online programs, Food Business Success and Master Your Business, her clients are able to skip the line to quickly, safely, and profitably launch or grow a packaged product business with less worry, confusion, and overwhelm. Well, thank you, Sari, for joining us, and we're excited to hear about developing a pricing strategy.
Right. Well, it's good to be back with you all. Many of you know or may know me already, but I normally am in Denver. That's where I live, but I am in Costa Rica right now, so making everybody jealous in January. Uh, Missed all the super cold temperatures, but yeah, Denver is my home. So, all right, well, let's jump in, and I wanted to go through the slides, have some slides to show you, and then hoping that there'll be people that want to kind of work through their pricing strategy or ask questions about it and get feedback. So. Really want to make this useful for you and what you're here to learn. So jump in here. Um, so let's get going. So imagine, it's probably not hard to imagine, you make the most amazing fill in the blank. For today's podcast or presentation, I'll be talking about granola because it's a fairly simple business or fairly simple product, but insert whatever product you make. That, I know this feeling of like, I'm excited and I love my product and everybody tells me I have a great product and I should start a business. And so you're very excited and you launch into it and you invest in packaging, you invest in ingredients, you maybe invest in a commercial kitchen, or outfit your own kitchen if you're doing cottage food. You maybe buy some equipment, some things that are going to help speed up the production. You maybe you apply to farmers markets, or pay for booth spaces at events and pop-ups, or you pitch to buyers and get on grocery store shelves, or you start a website, or a combination of all of those things, right? There's lots of other sales channels besides these, but the point is you're like, I'm in business. I'm doing it. I get sales. I'm having going through all that. And you're like, wow, money's coming in. People are buying my granola, and that's amazing. However, what I want to help you avoid with today's presentation is this. Usually it happens at the end of the year when people are doing their taxes, but it certainly can happen at any time where you're like scratching your head, like, is this actually making me money or am I going into more debt? Right? That like, wait a second. This doesn't quite penciling out. And maybe I have an expensive hobby rather than a business. And so what I want to help avoid is the $0 or the -dollars. We want to see the line trending in the right direction. And the reality is, like, you can't compete on price, right? Typically, I mean, I would say 100% of the time, unless you have large capital behind you and you have lots of money to spend and invest in your company, most people are not able to get their pricing down to a place that you could, you would be comparable in a grocery store setting. And you're going to be a lot more expensive on shelves, at a farmer's market, online, right? And I just chose a Colorado granola company here. I don't work with Spark and Honey yet, but you can see here they're charging $9 for a bag of granola versus, what might be at your grocery store shelf that's $4, $5. And that's really hard for people because I know you want to compete on price. I know you want to be there, but the reality is like the scale just isn't there for you. And so we're going to start with our COGS calculation. It's as we develop a pricing strategy, this is really the backbone of your pricing strategy. And what I find is that most people, many people, not, I shouldn't say most, but I do find a lot of people are confused on exactly what is co so COGS stands for cost of goods sold. It's basically what is everything that it takes for me to get a finished product that I am now able to sell. And so I find that oftentimes people aren't factoring in everything that needs to be in there, or they're putting in the wrong things and they're inflating their COGS more than they should. So it can go one way or the other. But I want to be sure that we have like a solid foundation with our cost of goods sold. So here's the formula, and you would calculate this for one batch. I find it typically easier to think about creating a batch rather than just one unit, but we're going to get to one unit cost. So it's four things. It's your ingredients, it's your packaging, and anything that it takes to like house the product, right? So it could have multiple pieces of packaging. It's active make time. So if I'm making granola, it's the time that I am mixing it, spreading it out on sheet pans, putting it in the oven, but it's not time that it's baking in the oven. That is passive time. So we don't calculate that in our cost of goods sold because we can be doing something else. We could be starting a new batch or, weighing out new ingredients or something like that, putting on labels on a previous batch. So we want to be sure it's really good. What I recommend is keeping a time journal, just like having a notebook, kind of a, field notes, if you will, at your kitchen, home or commercial and just make notes, like keep track of, okay, this batch took this long and like note the time. You're like a scientist, right? You're kind of documenting the experience, but you want to only include active make time. And then you want to include active packaging time. So how long does it take you to affix the labels onto the bag? If you have multiple pieces of packaging, if you got to package the granola in like a plastic bag first, and then you're going to put it in a tube or whatever, right? Like it could have multiple steps. So you want to calculate each of those things separately. So those are the four things that are included. Now, you're going to notice I did not include rent in here. I did not include equipment. I'm not including insurance or like there's things that people start wrapping in there. And the base COGS are just these four things, right? And I'm not saying there's not value in looking at those other numbers, but this is really how you want to do it. Okay, so you're going to divide that. If you're making a whole batch, you're going to divide that by the number of units in the batch. And that's going to equal your cost or your COGS for one product. So it's just important that you start understanding the terminology in CPG, and you're going to hear COGS all the time. Sometimes people are going to want it as a percentage, and it's basically the opposite of the margin percentage. So we'll look at that. It could be a number, right? And so I'll show you an actual real life example where we'll get a number. And then what I what I'm putting in here is what I hear a lot of times that people will say, well, I just multiply it by 50% and then that's my price. Or maybe they even push it up and they're like, I'm going to have a 66%, multiply it by three, and that'll give me a 66%, gross margin percentage. So again, I'm saying this is what I see and hear people do a lot. And they're like, this is good, right? I mean, I'm charging 50% more. And so that equals their retail price. So I want to take you through my granola example and put some numbers around this. And we're going to talk about why this number, ultimately, this number is not going to cut it in the long run. Okay. Let's see. So, and I meant to take the slide out. I'm actually going to jump ahead really quick because I showed it in a different way. There we go. Okay, so this comes from I have a pricing for profit workshop, and I'm going to give you guys an offer at the end to get this at a discount. But it's basically this amazing spreadsheet I have created over the years, and so it's gonna have all of these pieces. So we're gonna start with the ingredients, and it's going to calculate it all for one batch. So here's the amount for our ingredients. Then we have our packaging. Here's the total for our packaging. Then we're going to have our active make time, our production time. And I put $18 an hour and it's 61 minutes to make this batch of granola. And then I also have the packaging time and I factored 30 minutes, $18 an hour. Now, I hear all the time that people are like, but I'm not paying myself, or it's just me. And I want to offer that you are not, if you don't include labor, your cost of goods sold is, well, it's just not right. It's not correct. And it's gonna bite you in the ass later if you don't. So I don't care that you're not technically paying yourself. I want you to put a number in there. I want you to, look at the marketplace and say, well, what if I had to pay somebody? Because ultimately, what I believe to be true is 90% of the time, for you to grow your business and scale it to where you want it to be, you're probably going to have to get out of production. You're going to either have to hire people or go to a co-packer. It's usually the first thing to go. I have a gal who works with me in my program, and she actually has a granola business. And I mean, she has made every batch of granola over like a 7-year period. And she's finally like, I gotta stop being the only person who knows how to make this granola, right? And anyway, that's a whole other side story. But the point is, put a number in there. It doesn't mean you're writing yourself a check, but to calculate our cost of goods sold correctly, we got to put something in there that's, market appropriate. So that's going to get us, in this case, it's like dividing, this batch made 100 units, it's 12-ounce bags. We're going to get a cost of goods sold of $3.50. And the beauty of the spreadsheet is it like does it all for you, which is amazing. And then we're going to give it a price. So remember I said we're going to multiply by 2 or 3 is what I usually hear. So in this case, I multiplied it. We're getting a 61% margin. I'll show you that. So I priced it at $9. You're like, great, it's above 50%. It's 61%. Yay. We're also going to we'll touch briefly on wholesale. So I'm including that in this demonstration. One thing to note here, right, is that we need to think about what's called pricing parity. And where that, like the $9 in this example is what I'm charging a consumer. And if I'm charging a consumer that, in theory, on the grocery store shelf or somewhere selling it online, that they would also be paying, the customer would be paying the same amount, right? And so you're going to have to take less when you sell wholesale because there has to be room for the store to mark it up and for them to make money. And that said, I do typically recommend pricing parity, but I have gotten more flexible on it over the years in certain circumstances. But in general, think about I do want to create pricing parity across the board where the customer is generally always paying the same amount. So if I price it at $9, like I said, that gives me in this top one 61%, basically 61% margin. And I also included the targets here. I don't always give you guys the targets. It's my trade secret sauce, but I want to give them to you now. So your targets for direct to consumer are 65 to 75%, and then I include wholesale here as well. But in this model, right, because this is what I hear people talk about is like, oh, I'm getting 61% margin. That's so great. So I want to play this out for you. Now, I know I'm going to throw some numbers at you, and I want you to not get like too involved in the numbers and trying to noodle it out. I want you to just see the overall picture of it. And I'm a very visual person and I can get a little bit stuck in numbers, even me. So I just want you to like preface that and say, don't get too lost in the weeds on the numbers and just kind of look at the high level end result. Okay. But we gotta deal with numbers. That's part of being in business. So, I want to just before I get into the numbers itself, talk about like remind you of the components of your profitability. So the terminology would be like gross profit, or you might hear profit margin or gross margin. This is your sales, top line sales, minus your cost of goods sold. And then you'll hear net profit, and that is our sales minus our cost of goods sold plus our overhead. So remember, I said rent doesn't go in your cost of goods sold, but here's where you would put in your rent. So overhead would be things like rent, licensing fees, marketing expenses, website, when you pay market fees, any labor not included in your cost of goods sold. So maybe you're hiring people to go to the farmers markets or do deliveries for you or other social media, things like that. Any professional services, coaching programs like my programs, memberships, like anything else, basically, that's not in your cost of goods sold. And of course, you can get even more in the weeds and break these up into different types of expenses. But just for simplicity, we'll just call those like overhead expenses. Those are everything related to the business, not in your cost of goods sold. Okay, so let's take an e-commerce strategy or this pricing strategy first, and then I'll do a farmer's market one as well. And this, I just try to pull something like some numbers that I see often, right? I see kind of, I think that this is a very reasonable sales, and you could say, well, is it in a month or 2 months, whatever. But let's just take this that you sell 1,300 units, 1,300 bags of granola. And the breakdown is you have some bundling, right? So there's some single bags, there's 2 packs and 4 packs. And we see this a lot, right? Where people are like, okay, but I gotta have free shipping. And so let's just say in our model that we do free shipping when people order 4 bags of granola, right? Okay, so let's play this out. And remember, don't get lost in the weeds and the numbers, but just look at the high level. I try to do some nice colors here for you too. But our model is $9 a bag, 2 for 16 or 4 for 31. So, right, they get a little discount as they buy more. So our top line sales is 10,000 bucks basically. Our cost of goods sold at this $3.50 is 4,550. And then I'm not showing you all of this. I certainly can if you guys have questions about it, but I also factored in all of our costs of sales for us to sell these bags. And that includes free shipping. That includes like the outer boxes that this comes in. This includes labor to pack it all up. This includes the the tape and the paper and like you put in the crinkle stuff, right? All of that stuff. I put into a cost of sales. And then I can factor in this overhead cost. This is like your monthly website fees and credit card fees and your licensing and your insurance and on, right? All the things we talked about. So overhead. So that's going to give us a profit of $702. At least we're profitable, we're in the green. So, but I always kind of ask people like, is that worth it? Like all that effort to make $700? Now let's say we're going to actually we're going to change the pricing on this and we're actually going to sell our granola for $12 a bag. Now, I know some of you are like, what? I can't charge $12 a bag. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But let's just say let's just look at it from a pricing standpoint that if I bump this up to a 71% margin, I'm going to sell it for $12 for a single bag. But I'm going to give people some price breaks, right? At the two, like if they buy two, it's $11 a bag. If they buy four, it's 10 something a bag, 10.50 a bag. All right, so there's some price breaks in there to make it a little bit more, tolerable for people. So our top line sales is 14,000. Same cost of goods sold, about the same for our cost of sales, still the same overhead. And then our net profit is $3,904. A big difference. Right? If all things stay the same, we still just sold the same amount of granola. We still put in the same amount of work, the same amount of advertising dollars, but we changed the price, right? And this is why going through these scenarios and really seeing like, what does this pricing strategy get me in the end? And I want to also, what I see a lot, right, is on top of this, you want to offer a discount. You're like, hey, it's Black Friday, or it's some random weekend, or it's football season, or whatever, right? National Breakfast Day. And you're like, I want to offer a 15% discount, or you signed up for my mailing list. So now we have to let's just factor in that discount. So on the model where it's $9 a bag, that gets us, now we're actually in the negative $843 versus in the $12 a bag, now we're at $1,800 basically. So really big difference. And I'll stop there because Barb, you have a question?
Yeah, Beth has a great question. Where do the transportation costs go then? Where do you have that?
Oh, that's a great question. So, if I don't answer this completely, please let me know. So, if it's shipping, like shipping you the ingredients or shipping you the packaging, anything that it takes to get you there, the cost of goods sold there, then make sure that's included in your cost of goods sold. So if you pay for shipping on your packaging, that needs to be part of your cost of goods sold. So if you kind of
Okay.
fine tune that, it would be I ordered labels and it was this amount for the labels plus shipping. So make sure both of those are in your cost of goods sold. If we're talking about like shipping, like this cost of sales includes that free shipping to the customer when they buy the 4 bags. And so that's part of the reason why this is so high, because that's, I think I did a $8 for shipping, and that's adds up a lot.
Yeah.
Did
Beth,
that
does
answer, you
that
think that
answer?
answered her question or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. The great question, and I should have mentioned that. So yeah, there's transportation coming in, transportation going out. In wholesale, we can talk about transportation as far as delivery costs go. Okay, so that's e-commerce, very typical model that I see. And then let's just run through a farmer's market. So in this scenario, we sell 300 bags at one market. There's 100 singles, 52 packs, 25 4 packs. All right, it's $9 a bag, same pricing model as what was online. Our gross sales are almost 2,500. Then we're going to take out our cost of goods sold, 1,050. We have our cost of sales, right? Where we have the gas to get there, we have the credit card fees, we have the market fees. Maybe our samples, of course, right? Maybe we're even paying somebody to come and help us at the market. I think I did include some labor in here. So this might be a typical model that I see at a farmer's market. And then you still have the same overhead. Now, of course, if you're in multiple sales channels, I'm just assuming you're just doing farmers markets in this. If you're in multiple sales channels, you could spread that out. But for simplicity, we're kind of like totally different, like only in farmers markets. So that's going to get us $275 in profit. And I mean, it's not horrible, but top line, you're like, oh, I brought in $2,500. You're like, I had a great day at the market. This was amazing. But when you really do the math, right, that's where you kind of go, "Ugh, was that worth it? All of that effort to stand there for 5 hours and, getting up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m., whatever. So $275 net profit. Let's do the $12 bag, the same exact model. Our top line is $3,350. Same cost of goods sold, same cost of sales, same overhead, right? That's going to be a really big difference, $1,150. So almost like what, $900 difference. That's probably gonna feel a lot better walking away from a farmer's market with that in your pocket. Um, so I want to talk about sales itself because what I get is like, well, I can't sell a $12 bag of granola. No one's going to buy it for that amount, right? Or, whatever dollar amount it is. When I push people, I'm like, well, you really got to charge more for this. I think bundles is definitely a way to go. You can see in that $12 when I put a more expensive single bag out there, what I'm really encouraging people is like, well, actually, it's $10.50 if you get four of them. Right. And so we're bringing down the price for the customer, but we're encouraging higher sales. So definitely bundling is going to be, I feel like it creates, a win-win for your customers, buy more, save more, and do a lower or free shipping if you're doing online sales. But I find that I usually have to bump people's individual bag price up. I mean, I would say 70% of the time, I'm like, yeah, that's got to go up for one bag. First of all, especially if you're doing e-commerce, it's never going to work to just ship one bag of granola, right? You got to encourage those bundles for your own sake and frankly for the customers because it's not going to be a good shipping model. They're going to be paying a lot in shipping. So it's just so much better. So you're going to get way more efficiencies when people buy more. So you really want to encourage that. Um, I think it's also about learning how to sell in a way that doesn't feel pushy, sleazy, salesy, get. And I talk about this in a couple, I have some farmers market sales programs that really teach you about like how do you sell from a place of abundance, of love, of like finding your people and you're offering value. They're like, oh my gosh, thank you. I am so excited to pay you for this product because you're solving my problems or you're delighting me and you're creating a really great experience. And I want to, I want this product in my life. So I think a lot of it, I'm actually just because of this presentation, I'm recording a podcast about this very thing. Is like changing your mindset around that four-letter word of sell. Right? Like you're in business. Welcome to selling, right? And learning how to sell from, a much more, I'm not getting people's money. I'm not trying to get their money. I'm trying to offer them something that they want in exchange for, value the product in exchange for a dollar for a transaction. And so I think that's one of the big shifts there. And the reality is at farmers markets, people are willing to pay more. They're having an experience. And, online you can create more value as well and really educate people about the product. And like I said, use those bundles to kind of bring the price per unit down, um, and make it a win-win for everybody. So I really want to encourage you to think about, how do I get better at selling and get over my fear of selling and making offers? So talking about value, and you might have heard this like USP, unique selling position. How are you solving a pain point? How are you delighting someone? How are you making their life better, easier, faster, more convenient, right? Like all of those things that your product can do. And stop talking about trying to compete on price, right? You just cannot compete on price. Instead, focus on, how you are different and why things cost what they do. Especially at a farmer's market, you have an audience there. They're trying your product and you can share this information. I've even seen I did I have a holiday ready boot camp, and we talked about the psychology of selling and like really getting into that more. And customers actually really appreciate you breaking down like, what is the true cost of this? And sharing with them like, this is how much things cost, right? If you want to be, fully gluten free and have all of the, be like really dialed in on that stuff, like share with your customers what things really cost. And in the US especially, we are very, like, a lot of our food system is very subsidized in the traditional grocery store. And so you need to be sure you're sharing with them what are the true costs, and that they are supporting their local economy. I hear this all the time, like, well, I would never pay that for granola, right? In this example. And we got to get over our own objections of paying what you need to charge. You may not be your target customer. You might be the cheapest person out there that you're like, I only buy things on sale. I would never buy my own granola. First of all, I want you to think about like maybe you change that, and maybe you do start shopping more locally. Maybe you do start supporting, think about like how you're supporting the bigger economy, and it feels good to support other makers. But also realizing like you just might not be your target customer, and there are people who are willing to pay that. I promise you. And changing your language. So stop telling me that it's gluten-free and it's got these benefits and it's crunchy and it's I don't know, got protein in it. And instead really think about what are the benefits? How is this going to make me feel? How's this going to change my morning routine? Right? And it can be a subtle shift, but oftentimes we just love to talk about, as makers, we love to talk about the features versus the benefits. And then just practice asking, right? Make offers, make crazy offers like, hey, can I wrap 12 of these up for you? And let people tell you no. Like sometimes it's better to do they call it like a price anchor. Well, I can wrap up 8 of these for this amount of money. And they're like, no, no, I don't need 8, but I will take 4 or I'll take 2. Right. And so you can just like be creative. And if somebody tells you no, then you're learning information, and stop being so afraid of no. You're gonna have to make offers all day long, and the more comfortable you can get with it, the better. And we have a really great workshop about up-leveling your farmers market with Danny Walsh of Peak State Coffee, and he talks about this where he like got like a $300 sale at a farmers market because he just kept making offers of like, well, you also need the canister and you need this thing and let's wrap this up. And she ended up like it was like a $300 sale. It was wild. So, um, and most of these people you're never going to see again anyway, or they're going to become your best customers because they're going to want to come back. All right. Maybe I'll stop it there. Barb, any questions or comments on that
See
before
anything
we
in the
move on?
chat? Beth, do you have any questions at this point?
No, I don't. I think that there's some great things in there about your conversation about pricing, and I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about how this can apply to some of our perishable goods like produce,
Mm,
because we definitely don't always make offers on that till the end till the end of the day, and we also have sometimes have more competition at the farmers markets, and so
yeah.
if you're getting to that today, great. If not, we can have the
No, I
conversation
appreciate that. I
tomorrow.
can speak a little bit to that. I used to work for a farm and we did perishables, obviously, and I used to actually do the farmers markets at that time. I think abundance sells, so like really piling high, being willing to waste some product, obviously at the end. Um, and I mean, the reality is we do see like stuff your bag for $12 or whatever. Like it does work. It's a challenge, it can be a challenging model. But maybe there's some ways of like bundling or, get this and this, like your tomatoes and your basil for like a bundle price. So again, you're encouraging people to buy more. And then also really talking about those features, things that people, it's kind of just a little bit different way of wording it. Like if you're organic or non-GMO, right? Like feel great about the produce you buy for your family versus like we're non-GMO. You really want to try to tap into people's feelings about things or like the best tasting tomato guaranteed you ever had. And do you sample that and really let people have an experience so that you become their go-to produce person. Um, so those are some of the ideas that come to mind, but happy to have more conversation at the end too.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to do a quick wholesale model because we might have some people watching the replay who are doing some self-distribution. I'm not going to get into, I'm working with a distributor model because that's a bigger nut to crack than we have time for today. But let's just run through a quick model. If I sell 200 cases, we'll say in a month, but you can use any time that period you want. Sell 200 12 count cases. That's 24 units of granola or 2,400 units of granola. And if I'm going with that $9, remember that price parity. So I'm telling the grocery store that my MSRP, my manufactured suggested retail price is $9. That's that you know, well, and I shouldn't say it's 61% gross margin. It's going to be less for you, right? um, but the cost of the retailer is $68 for the case and then $5.67 a unit. I can't remember now what that was on my spreadsheet, but it is lower than 61%, obviously, because you got to take a hit. You got to lower your price. But the top line sales for this is 13.6. And then I'm going to factor in my cost of goods sold at the $3.50. And then the cost of sales. Now, this is going to be like delivery, could be the outer boxes, the master cases, things like that. Um, and then I'm going to factor in some overhead. And that's going to net me $3,800 basically in net profit. Now, you might be like, I can't. This is where the price parity, I'm willing to break some of the rules. I'm gonna say in if you don't think like if you're like customers will not pay $12 a bag on a grocery store shelf, right? There's too much competition there. I'm not able to really I can't have that conversation with them like I could at a farmer's market or on my website. And maybe the buyer is saying, yeah, there's no way we're not going to put a $12, a bag granola on the shelf. So you're like, okay, well, what if I just go up $1? I get, a higher gross margin. So the cost to the retailer is 75.60 for the case, $6.30 a unit. So my gross sales is higher, right? About $2,000 higher. The COGS stays the same, cost of sales stay the same, overhead stays the same. So now my net profit is $5,340. And I just want to point out a couple of things here that, obviously a dollar shift can make a big difference, about $1,500 difference. But and one of the reasons why I want to encourage you to think about going in at a little higher price point is that most stores are gonna require you to do some kind of discounting, right? To put that yellow tag on your product. Now, not, some of the small like gift shops and things like that might do that, but let's just imagine you're in a scenario where you have to do that. Whole Foods requires you to do 4 minimum of 15% off scan backs. And let's say they also require you to do demos, right? So now I'm including every time a unit goes through, you now owe 15% to pay back that coupon, that discount. And you're doing demos, $1,000. In the $9 bag scenario, you're at a loss of $412. If you're doing it on the $10 a bag, right? Same amount for it's going through. That's an $1,100 profit. So big swing in that at just a dollar increase a bag. Now, you're going to have to educate people. You're going to, again, have great packaging. I do find that investments in branding, in packaging, make a huge difference on store shelves. And the people who are willing to, make that investment with a graphic designer, get a little more premium packaging, maybe you value add, and like that granola company I showed at the beginning, Spark and Honey, they actually have an 11-ounce bag. So maybe you actually are like, instead of a 12-ounce bag, you're doing an 11-ounce bag. Like there's ways to kind of make it work so that you get a little bit more margin. And I think overall, the thing that's really important is that you are thinking about what is that path to profit? Because again, you're like, I can't sell like on a grocery store shelf. I can't say it's a $12 bag. No one's going to buy it at that price. Again, I can have those conversations and I can do bundle deals at a farmer's market, but I can't do that on the grocery store shelf. I really want you to think about, the model that you build is that in the long run, is there a path to profit? And one of the best ways we can do that is by improving our cost of goods sold, bringing that price per unit down so that it's more, instead of like being 40% or, that $3.50, that we actually bring it down to maybe more like 25%. And so for every dollar we sell, $75 or 75 cents is coming back into our pockets. All these numbers. But that is one of the best things that you can be doing is in the short term, you might just need to prove the model and prove your minimum viable product, and you might not be making money. And you just know that you do the work ahead of time to say, yeah, that's how it's going to be for now, but I can go to a co-packer. I can get better equipment. I can do larger batches. And so here's what you can do. You can scale up to make larger batches. You can potentially buy a labeler or buy, bigger equipment, things that are going to help speed things up. Maybe you're going to buy in bulk and you can buy, oftentimes ingredients and packaging, you'll have price breaks the more you buy. And so it's this constant balancing act of getting your sales up, recognizing you might be taking a little bit of a loss, but then increasing lowering your cost of goods sold, increasing your profit margin, right? So that you're scaling and you're bringing your expenses down. You might look at going to, a commercial kitchen if you've been in cottage food, or going to a better kitchen that has better equipment. You might bring in staff, or you might look at going to a co-packer. Typically, not always, but usually I see the price per unit come down at a co-packer. And, but the minimums are going to be much higher, right? You can't just make a batch of maybe 100 bags of granola. You're going to be making I don't know, 2,000 bags, right? So it's going to be a much bigger investment up front. The other thing you can do on a path to profit is like, how do you create more demand? How do you get people more excited? How do you get people buying more and like keep that funnel full and like becoming really your raving fans, your loyal customers? So never forget that like there's, lower your expenses, but also how do we increase our sales? And those two will balance, will work in your favor if you can be focusing on both of those. And then you might think about, I often recommend people start when they first launch, like just start at a farmer's market or farmer's market and maybe your website or farmer's market and a little bit of wholesale. But I just don't want people to jump into too many sales channel pools right at the beginning. But you might think about like, okay, we're dialed in at our farmers markets, and now I can start layering on and like really going for wholesale, or maybe I'm going to start selling on Amazon or on my website, and right, we can like spread some of those overhead costs out over multiple sales channels for more efficiency. So imagine same example where we had the $9 a bag, and maybe we're like, yeah, we're going to keep it at $9 a bag. But now we're going to lower our cost of goods sold to $2.50. So I shaved $1 off of my cost of goods sold, right? By scaling up, by buying equipment, built bigger purchases. So our cost of goods sold, like the top line sales is still the same, but it came down by $2,400, which is a big difference. Cost of sales remains the same, overhead remains the same. Now my profit, my net profit is $6,228 versus $3,800. And when I do that scan back coupon and I do the demos, I'm still going to make a profit, right? At 19, almost $2,000 there. So that cost of goods sold makes a huge, huge difference. And again, I know sometimes people get really discouraged, like, well, I can't charge more than this. And my cost of goods sold, I can't bring it down. And I just want you to know, like, I want you to know what you're getting into and like how long before you can start getting into profit. And either, it can't just be sales, sales, sales. I've seen people go bankrupt from top line sales, right? If they don't also bring down their expenses. So I want to show you that in DTC terms, if we bring down the cost of goods sold. And I just kept it at the $12 a bag. But the difference here, right, $3,900 versus $5,200. That cost of goods sold, really important. And the thing that we haven't talked about is we're just paying back our cost of goods sold from the last batch. Now, in order for us to do a whole nother farmer's market or a whole new round of sales to a grocery store or online, we have to go replace that product. And that's an additional $4,500. And so in the long run, that's like we're actually losing money every time. And I have a graph that'll show you this, right? It's like the curve goes downwards. Versus when we bring down our cost of goods sold, when we replace the product, not only do we make more net profit, but the cost to replace the product, we're actually going to come out ahead, right? So I think this is a valuable, right? $12, I'm just taking kind of a simple example here, but $12 a bag. You can see if it's a lower cost of goods sold and $12 a bag, like we're actually trending up, up, up. In all the other models, unfortunately, the trend line is going way down. Now, I do think that this yellow line will eventually flatten out, but you have to decide, like, this is 5 rounds of sales at like 1,300 units. Like, how long are you willing to lose money? And it's really important to do that break-even analysis all the way to the end and say, and then go, am I willing to be in this and for 20 rounds and spend this amount of much money to finally break even. I mean, that's up to you, right? But this is why it's really important to look at your pricing strategy. So, key takeaways, and then we'll open it up or comments, wrap up, whatever we need to do. So, key takeaways, top line revenue does not speak to the health of the business. I hear, yeah, we had a million in sales, like amazing, but that's not telling me anything. I have seen people sell their way into bankruptcy, into closing their business. 50% is definitely not enough profit margin long term. 60% is not enough. It's for direct to consumer. It's got to be more in that 70, 75, 80%. You got to do this modeling. You got to look at the bigger, the long-term path of like, how do I get to profit? Is it increasing sales? Is it lowering my expenses? Is it going into additional sales channels? Like, do this work. And I can certainly help you with this. There's other people, even potentially your small business development centers could probably help you with this. But I just see so many people start these businesses from passion, and I love that. And I know your product's amazing, but you're going into business. So you got to put that business hat on and be willing to look at these numbers. And either charge more and get better at selling and differentiating yourself in the market, or, like I said, know how long you will have to reinvest your own money and self-fund to get to break even. And then knowledge is power. Don't go into this blind. Or if you're already launched and you're like, oh crap, then do this work and change course. I mean, ASAP. And it's beautiful time in Colorado. It's January. So if you're doing farmers markets, now would be the time to do this work and change your pricing strategy and get better at selling. So I do have a special, I have a book that is called Key Ingredients, and you guys can get a free ebook copy if you go to foodbizsuccess.com, CO Proud, Colorado Proud. And then I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast. Those are all free resources. And then I am giving you guys a 40% off discount if you want to get that whole pricing for profit tool. And I'll just say this out loud because this will hold me accountable, but I do want to work in that whole break-even analysis into that course. So if you get it, once I get that done, then you guys will get that as well. But use CO Proud Profit as the code for that. That's all I got.
That was fantastic. Just a good reminder. You've got to do the work, right? Because it sounds good. 50% gross margin sounds fantastic.
It's 50%. Like,
yeah.
You didn't even charge labor in there. Now
yeah.
Really in trouble.
No, and you make just such a great point also about selling. The people at the farmers market, I always believe they're there because they want to buy from you. Otherwise, they'd be at the grocery store. That's how I look at it. So,
I go to the market, I bring money with me. I'm like in a mindset of like, I want to buy cool stuff. I want people to sell to me. I want to have a great experience. I want to try all the things. I want you to tell me about your jam and your tomatoes, and like, I'm there to have an experience. Give me one.
Yeah, and it's a great
Don't
opportunity for what you're selling to share that with people, to share that experience, and even why you're in business in the first place. Why did you decide to make your granola or whatever? So, no, that was fantastic. Beth, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to just?
Sure, I could answer the question.
Go for it.
So I work with a lot of producers who are raising fruits and vegetables, and it's always hard to calculate cost of goods sold.
Yeah.
And there are some programs out there that help do it. Do you have any like big overarching hints for helping people to do that? Because so often we just price it at what the guy next to me at the farmer's market is selling it for, and they might have a lot higher cost of goods sold than you do, or a lot lower.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm more of a CPG expert. And so I focus more on packaged product. Like I said, I used to work for a farm, so I'm very familiar with that space as well. But man, yeah, that gets into so much more, like, pun intended, like in the weeds, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's the seeds and the water and the soil augmentation and the labor and, the water and all the things. I don't know, Barb, do you have any suggestions or place resources that you share with our
I don't,
growers?
Beth, but let me make a note and um, see if we can't find some, maybe even like CSU extension. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
some of those folks up there in the Regional Food Business Center. Um, that may be a good resource.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've got your email, so
Yeah,
I
it's
can get back
such a
to
big
you.
question. Like,
Right.
Yeah,
in our, CPG, we just buy the tomatoes, we buy the oats, whatever, right? And
yeah.
like somebody else has hopefully done their math to make
Yeah.
sure.
Unfortunately, not
So
as often.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm from Fort Collins area originally, and when I was working at the farm that I was at, there were so many farmers. We had a lot at that time. It was what, 2012, I think,
Mhm.
2011. And just a ton of farmers. And it was so sad because I definitely over the years have seen we've lost a lot of farms, and we're starting to see a few come back. And but I think I mean, you just get overwhelmed with all farming's really tough, right? And you get
Yeah.
overwhelmed with all the expenses, and you don't calculate them all until the end of the year. And then you're like, oh man. And of
Right.
course,
Right.
and it's so weather dependent, and you have so many factors that are out of your
I
control.
learned a lot about packaged products. So thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
No, that's a
My
good
pleasure. And a lot
question.
of farms do value added, right? And so it's good for,
Yes.
you're turning that tomatoes into tomato sauce, or you're turning the berries into jam or pickles. And, so we see a lot of farms. And the beauty is we do have like some great programs through CSU Extension and things like that, value added producer grants and things that can help farmers to do that because these perishable products just only, it's like you got that one farmer's market to sell it and then you're done.
Right.
It's not going to last very long. So definitely
Okay.
adding some value added can be a useful way to augment, add to the revenue or diversify at least.
Well, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank
Yeah.
you for joining. And yeah, good advice, Sari. Well, Colorado Proud members, keep tuning in to Cultivation Station for our podcast. In January, we talked with G Beta out of Greeley, Colorado, and they're an accelerator group that really works with ag companies, particularly ag tech, but there's a lot of resources out there for these startup companies. And we also talked with Commissioner Kate Greenberg. So tune into Cultivation Station to see what our Commissioner of Agriculture has to say about the Department of Agriculture, but also what she's seeing for Colorado. And in February, we're going to be learning about GAP, Good Agricultural Practices, and what that is and how to get certified. A lot of your customers may want that. So we're going to be learning about that. And we have a February webinar where we're going to be talking with ag tech companies, what they're doing, how they got there, and the resources that are out there to support them. So thank you again, Sari. Your advice is so valuable and your time is so valuable. Thank you for doing this. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.